for anyone who considers themselves a seeker of truth, of knowledge, of wisdom, you have to continue the search until you find the answer, until you find that connection. And for me, that answer was Bhakti Yoga. So I came to Bhakti Yoga. I found it in my second year. I was studying at WITS. And, they had this book table set up, and the yogis were there, the devotees were there. And my first thought when I saw them was just, yes, like these people look way too happy. These people look like they don't have problems in life. That's not good. But I also need to find out why they're so happy. So I signed up, went to my first yoga class, and it was terrible. My whole body was on fire. My arms and legs were shaking. And I was just feeling things I've never felt before. But after the session, my mind felt so peaceful. My mind felt calm and relaxed. And in the 20-something years I was alive, my mind was never that still. And that's the basis of happiness, Because I was feeling so peaceful, I was happy. I was happy the whole day. In the Bhagavad Gita it says, real happiness comes from peace. Even if you had all the money in the world, even if you had all the material things that you could ever hope to get, if your mind is not peaceful, you can never enjoy them. So the yoga teacher told me that feeling of being peaceful and happy is our natural state. That's how we're meant to be 24/7. I thought he was selling me dreams. But I wanted to find out how to cultivate that constant happiness, that happiness that comes 24/7. So they introduced me to mantra meditation. Who here has heard of mantra meditation? Raise your hand. Okay. Do we know what mantra meditation is? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. So, mantra meditation, just to explain it, the word mantra is made up of two root words, manas, meaning mind, and trayate, meaning to deliver or to liberate or to free. So a mantra is a word or a phrase which is used to deliver or liberate the mind. To deliver it from what? To free it from what? Its entanglements, its anxieties, its fears, its worries, its stresses. Because the mind is full of these things. And why is the mind so full of all these worries and sufferings? Because the mind is so closely attached or linked to the object of suffering. And what is that object? It's this body. The body is constantly undergoing suffering. To have a body means to accept suffering. And the body undergoes 4 types of suffering: birth, death, disease, and old age. Okay? So the more your mind is attached to this physical body, the more you will experience these sufferings, the more intense they become. And you have to kind of think about it, because the body has different layers. You have the layer of being a man. If I accept that I'm a man, then I must accept all the pains and the sufferings that come with manhood, which are many, 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 many. If you are a woman, if I think I'm a woman, then I must accept all the pains and sufferings that come with being a woman. And I'm sure the women know, there are a lot, probably more than they are being a man. If I accept that I'm African, I must accept the pains and sufferings that come with being African. If I accept that I'm white, then I must accept all the pains and sufferings that come with being white. And you can go on so forth, being human, being African, being South African. And, being South African is a different story. Yeah, The sufferings that come with being South Africans are, yeah, there's a long list. So this body suffers. And everything that we consume on a day-to-day basis reinforce that connection between our bodies and our minds. It reinforces that attachment. So mantra meditation does the opposite. It reinforces a different kind of relationship to our bodies. So there's a good relationship that you can have with your body. A good relationship with your body is to understand that, okay, I'm not this thing, but I have this thing. So while I still have this vehicle, this machine, this body, I must take care of it. I must eat right, I must exercise, I must do my yoga, I must take care of it. An unhealthy relationship with the body is to say, I am this thing. I am this vehicle, I am this machine. Okay? So mantra meditation is there to help cut the strings so that we're no longer suffering so much. So that when the body suffers, when the mind suffers, I can understand that it's not, these things aren't happening to me actually. They're happening to my body. They're happening to my mind. And who I am, which is the eternal soul, is not suffering. I'm always in a constant state of bliss, of joy, of happiness. So that's what Bhakti Yoga and mantra meditation are meant to do. They're meant to help us realize that we're not this body, we're not our minds, that we are pure spirit soul in a constant state of bliss and happiness. And in the 6, 7, 8 years that I've been practicing yoga and Bhakti Yoga, I've honestly experienced a dramatic decrease in the amount of stress, anxiety, and fear that comes with just being a student, or being a person, or being a South African, or being an African in this life. So, in order to get the full fruit of mantra meditation, you need to experience it. It requires an open mind, and it requires deep absorption. You need to be able to firstly hear the mantra. You have to chant it with your mouth, and then you hear yourself chanting it. And then you chant it again, and then you hear yourself, and then you chant it, and then you hear yourself. And in that loop, it creates a feedback in the mind. It allows your mind to absorb yourself in the mantra. And once you start to absorb yourself in the mantra, you will experience it for yourself. You feel less stressed. You feel happy. You feel peaceful. You feel so nice. Like you've just done a full yoga session. So, before I start to ramble, I'll end it there. Any questions, comments, any thoughts before we actually do some mantra meditation?
Fantastic question.
Yeah.
So guys, the question is, how do we control the mind, okay? And we want to be in control of our minds and prevent the mind from doing all sorts of other things, right? So we want to be in control of our mind. Mind control.
Mind control. Yeah.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, because it feels like the mind has a mind of its own, you know. It feels like sometimes it has its own agenda. You're trying to do this and it wants to do this, you know. In the Bhagavad Gita it says that. It says your mind can be your best friend or it can be your greatest enemy, you know. So how do we turn it and make it our best friend? So there are so many things that you can do. So firstly, yoga is a great way to do that. During your yoga practice, I'm sure you experienced afterwards, you felt a little bit more peaceful, more relaxed, yeah? So that's the one way to do it, because when the mind is peaceful and relaxed, then only can you start to, regain control of it. So it starts by first instituting that habit of practicing yoga as often as you can, you know. And then comes the meditation, the mantra meditation. Because that is a way to hack the mind in a way, you know. Because the mind can only be overcome with a greater energy, a superior energy. Because to deal with the mind on its own is a problem. It will strong arm you, it will defeat you, and it will drag you into some corner that you didn't know you ever thought you'd find yourself. So you need something more stronger than the mind, something that's got a higher vibration than the mind. And because the mind is material, it can only be overcome with something that is purely spiritual. That's the only way, you know. And the best and most spiritual thing is the mantra meditation. Yeah, so that's what I would suggest. Chant the mantra and see what happens. Yes.
Okay, we can
Sorry,
take
sorry.
one more question. Yes.
I wanted to ask about the effect of time.
Oh?
The effect of time in terms of
Like, do you believe there's a certain time to learn these things?
Mm.
Whether it's mantra or meditation? Because sitting here, if I came here last year, I would have listened to you and heard everything you said, and I would be like, this guy. But now that I've gone through certain things and the time has passed, I can understand what you're saying. So do you think time has an effect on that, or is it experiences?
fantastic question. So you came last year as well?
Yeah.
Okay. So students, what's your name? Sorry? Date. Dakes. So Dakes has been coming here since last year, and what he's saying is that since coming from last year, okay, so he's experienced it over this period of time. And how do you feel about it? And over time, he's kind of now embracing it more, and he's starting to experience it, right? So your question is about time. How long does it take you to?
No, like, do you feel like there's a set time? Like,
Okay.
there's
To
in your
achieve-
life, yeah.
Okay, you got that?
Mm.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, they say all good things in time. In time, you know. Yeah, we come to spiritual life after millions and millions of births. After millions of births, there does come a time when you become ready to take up the practice, to learn and to grow in the way that you're meant to. So yes, time plays a big role, because only at a certain point in your life are you able to fully grasp certain things. After you've learned certain things, after you've experienced certain things, after you've gone through so many things. Usually people who are so dissatisfied with life, with material energy, with material life, are ready for spiritual practice, because they've experienced material energy. They've experienced how it doesn't satisfy you, it doesn't make you happy. So only after you've gone through all of those experiences, after a certain period of time, when you're ready to take up the practice, then yes, it takes root. But I would say any time is tea time. Any time is tea time to take up some mantra meditation, to do some yoga, because you never know how much time you got, you know. It could end today, tomorrow, 2 seconds. So don't waste any more time.
Is that cool? We have another question? Yes. Okay. So her question is, you said the mind is actually material. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, yeah. So the brain and the mind are different. The brain you can think of as the hardware. If you think of a computer, the brain is the hardware, the stuff you can see, and then the mind will be the software. It will be the program in the computer. But the brain and the mind, or the computer and the software, are both one thing, basically. Just like the mind and the brain. They're both material, because they're also kind of easily influenced by material energy. And, there's a hierarchy. There's first this body, which is gross matter that you can see. Flesh, blood, bone, made up of all the 5 elements: fire, water, air, ether, or space. And then you have the mind, which is made up of intelligence, the mind, intelligence, and false ego. And then you have what is higher than the mind and the body, which is the spirit soul. So that is the highest, beyond the body and the mind. Maybe Savisachi can elaborate a little bit more on why the mind is material.
Why is
Yeah.
it material?
As Mandla had put it, so gross matter and subtle matter. And his analogy was very clear then. The hardware would be the gross matter, the software would be the subtle matter. So the mind is, we understand you have a mind because you are acting in some intelligent way. You are planning. So the 3 divisions of what the mind does: thinking, feeling, and willing. So unfortunately for us, we are mostly influenced by what we feel. So that's why people think what they feel, that's the deepest reality. That's my truth. I feel like this. But if you think how many times you felt a way about a thing, and then the next hour, the next 2 days, you feel completely different about it. So who is observing the thinking and the feeling and the willing is what Mandla mentioned, the spirit soul. That's you and I. So in that analogy, you and I are the user, our body is the hardware, and the mind and intelligence are the software in the computer. Without the user, no matter how brilliant or how powerful that computer is, it's like there's no electricity, it doesn't run. So, like that, gross and subtle matter, and then soul, spirit, is anti-material. So it's a higher particle, it's a higher vibration. Thanks.